In this section, I will show you how to add filter buttons, including a drop-down with checkboxes where the user selects home type, clicks apply, and then the application updates the URL with selected filters and filters the list of homes while highlighting the active filter button. I'm going to start by adding some comments in this template to separate the main sections. So this one will be home list with the loader. And now the main section that I'm working on will be filter buttons. So the first thing I'm going to add here is a parent div. Then there will be another div inside of it, which will have the button with the first filter, which will be home type. Now I'm going to copy this first div and paste it a couple of more times and turn them into two more filters, which will be dates and guests. Reload the page and see the buttons displayed here. That's good. Next, I'm going to style these buttons by adding UK button default, UK button small, and UK text no wrap classes from UIKit, and apply same classes to the rest of the buttons, just like that. Next thing I'm going to do is to declare a class in this parent div, which is UK margin, which will add a little bit of space underneath the button and the first home in the list. Then I'm going to add UK flex class to display the buttons in line instead of being stacked, just like this. And then I'm going to add UK grid small class, which will add small gutter in between flex items. And now it looks all nice and tidy. Let's add a little drop down to the home type filter button, where in future we are going to place checkboxes for filtering the list of homes by home type. So I'll start by declaring a new div, which will be the drop down. And then I'm going to add a class to it that will say UK dropdown, which will turn it into a dropdown component from UIKit CSS framework. And I'll have it to be open by default by assigning UK open class. And after reloading the page, we see the dropdown. So that's good. And let me just make it a little bit wider by assigning UK with medium class to it. There it is, looks better. And now let's take care of the ability to toggle this drop-down on and off by clicking the home type button. So first I'll add this ngIf statement that will look into the property that I will name home type drop-down open, that will contain a Boolean value, true or false, that will tell whether the drop-down should be closed or open. After reloading the page, the dropdown disappears because this property doesn't exist yet. Therefore, Angular considers it to be falsy and hides the dropdown. Next, I'm going to bind to click event on the button. And when you click on the button, I'm going to update home type dropdown open property to be 1, which is equivalent to true. And that should open the dropdown. Save the page, click on the button, and here's the dropdown. It shows up. However, right now, there is no way for me to close it. So I'm going to update this assignment here to, instead of always assigning 1, which is true, to assign the opposite value of what's currently stored in the property. And that will toggle the value from true to false, depending on whether the dropdown is open or closed. And now the dropdown appears and disappears when I click on the button. Now let's take care of this red highlight by opening the component controller and declaring this property and assign the default value false to it, so that when the component is loaded for the first time, the dropdown is closed. Now inside of this dropdown for home type button, I'm going to declare a component that will represent a form with checkboxes for filtering homes by their type. I'll call it app home type filter. And then in the terminal, I'm going to use ngCli to generate this new component. As usual, I'm going to skip generating the test file as we don't need it. There you go. And now let me just go into the folder with the component and delete the less file for styling because we're not going to need it here, and delete its reference from here as well. There you go. Now reload the page, open the dropdown, and we see the default string from our newly generated component. And here it is in its template. Alright, so let me start here by declaring the main form element. And inside of there, I'll start by declaring the first label element, inside of which I'm going to add an input element which will represent the very first checkbox for filtering. I'll add UK checkbox class to it for some styling, and set the native type to be the checkbox. And the name of this checkbox will be for filtering by apartment type. Alright, first one is good, so let me copy this here and turn it into a couple of other checkboxes. So it will be for filtering by room type and by house type. And after that, let me add a button for applying these checkboxes that will in future will reload the page and filter the homes. Alright, here are all the elements. Let's just apply some styling to it. And for that, I'm going to declare this main div here and place all the elements inside of it. And turn this main div into UK grid. Just like that. And then I'm going to add a class to this grid that will make all children the width of 100%, so that they stack and go one after another, just like this. And then I'm going to add quite a bit of styling to this apply button. I'm going to turn it into a UK button, and then I'm going to add a link style to this button, and then I'm going to make it large. And then I'm going to align it to right, and also add some small margin around it. Alright, this looks almost good, just this apply button is mispositioned a little bit. So let me take it out of this main div and place it here. And now this looks great. Now let's add the ability to see which checkboxes the user selected after they click the apply button. I'll start by going into App Module and importing Forms module and Reactive Forms module from Angular Forms. Now let's go to our form component controller and inject form builder, just like that, and then use it to build a representation of our checkboxes. So we'll use form builder and say create a group, which will be an object representing each checkbox. So it will be apartment, room, and house. Now let's declare this actual form property, which will be the form group, just like this. And then go into the template and update the form element to connect it to our form using its form group input property, just like this. And then I'm going to bind to the submit event of this form when the user clicks on the apply button, and I'm going to execute a submit method while passing the value of checkboxes, whether they are selected or not, just like this. So now let's go into the controller and declare the submit method. And remember, it accepts form values. And for now, I'm just going to console log these values. Now reload the page. Select a couple of checkboxes. Click Apply. And it shows every checkbox as we declared it in our form. However, it doesn't show which checkboxes were selected. To fix that, let's go into the template again, and then manually connect each input checkbox here with its respective property in the form that we built in the controller by using form control name input property from Angular Forms. Just like this. Now try again to select checkboxes, click Apply. And now we see which checkboxes were selected. Alright, now let's see how we can set those selected filters in the current URL query parameters. I'll start by navigating into Home Type Filter Component Controller. And in the Submit button, I'm going to add a bit of code that will process form value object that contains selected filters, where I will use object keys native method from JavaScript to turn this object into an array that I will then filter by whether the checkbox is selected or not. Now let me output what I've got here in this home types array just to make sure it's working properly. Select apartment and room, click apply, and now here we see a plain old array of what exactly is being selected. Now I can work with that. So next I'm going to declare an output property in this component that I'll name applied, and it will be an event emitter. Back to the submit function. Here I'll use this output property and event emitter to emit a new event that will pass the array of selected filters. Now navigate to the homes component and bind to this new output property, just like this, where each time the user clicks apply, it will execute home type filter apply method and pass the array of filters. Now go to the controller of homes component and declare this new method. Home type filter applied, and it accepts the event with selected filters. And in here, for now, I'm just going to console log whatever I've got just to make sure it is receiving proper data. Alright, reload the page, select apartment and room, click apply, and now it shows the same exact thing. However, it is the data that we see from our homes component. Okay, now I can delete the console log statement and replace it with a call to the navigate function of Angular router, just like this. I will set it to navigate to homes path, which is the exact same path where we are right now. However, I'm going to specify new query parameters where it will set the new parameter I'll call home type, and it will be the array of selected filters, just like this. Now let me inject Angular router in this component. Looks good. Now reload the page. Select apartment and room, click apply, and now we see that it set the query parameters specifying what we have selected. That's perfect. And one last thing I'm going to do here is to set home type dropdown open property to false as soon as I click apply, so that the dropdown disappears when the query parameters are set. Otherwise, it'll stay open, which will be weird. Alright, let's try again. Set apartment and room, click apply, and now not only the query parameters are set, but also the dropdown disappears. Perfect. Now, before I can make use of those filters set in query parameters, I need to refactor homes component to use a command pattern for fetching the data and showing the spinner. I'll start by updating this assignment where the component grabs the reference to the observable with homes to, instead of calling getHomes method on data service, to simply reference the homes observable. And then in ng-onInit method, I'm going to call data service load homes method that I'm going to declare in just a bit. And this will be sort of a command for the data service to start loading the homes so that in our observable on line 13, we can receive them. All right, now let's go into the data service and rename this method to load homes and remove this return statement since it won't return anything. And now let's declare this new homes property, which will be a behavior subject from RxJS with an initial value of an empty array. Now let's finish implementing load homes method by subscribing to the result of calling the get method to retrieve the array of homes right here, and then grab that array of homes and push it into the homes stream so that homes component can receive it and display it on the page. Now let me just add the typings here to get rid of the red squiggly. Alright, looks good. Now go back to the homes controller. Let's reload the page, and it's almost working as expected, except that it no longer shows the spinner. To fix that, I'm going to go into the template and grab this whole bit that displays the spinner and put it inside of the div where we subscribe to the list of homes. Alright, I'm going to update it to be ng-container instead of ng-template, and then I'll remove the else statement from this structural ngIf directive, and then I'm going to add ngIf to this container spinner, where it will look if homes array has any items, and if it doesn't, it will show the spinner. Now reload the page. Spinner is displaying, and everything is working as expected. Alright, since we have our filters set in URL query parameters, we can use them to actually filter the home list. So I go into Homes Component Controller, and here I'll inject a reference to the current route using activated route service from Angular router. Then in ng-onInit, I'll use this service and reference query parameters observable and subscribe to it. Just like this, where it will receive the parameters from the URL. And for now, let me just try to output them and see if I got it right. When I reload the page without any query parameters, it shows nothing. And when I set something, in the console log, you can see that it references the set filters. Alright, now let me create this new variable that I will use for grabbing the list of set filters. Just like that. And now let me try to output it, and we can see that now it's simply an array of selected filters. That's good. Next, I'm going to move this data service load homes method inside of this query params subscription, just like that, and then pass the array of filters to it so that when it's loading homes, it can filter them. Now go inside of data service into the load homes, update the method signature to indicate that now it receives the selected filters. And ideally, I would have passed this list of selected filters along with the API call so that the filters can be applied on the server side, and on the application in the front end side, I could just receive already a filtered list. However, we don't have such capability in this example, so I'm going to filter the list of homes on the front end side using map operator from RxJS. I'll add a little comment here to indicate that. And inside of our map function, I'm going to return a result of filtering the received homes by whether the current home type includes one of the selected filters. Just like this. Remember, every home, according to our data in the JSON file, has the type right here so that we can filter it in our map method. Okay, reload the page. Let's try to set apartment filter and apply. And now we see only the apartment type homes. So that's good. However, if I remove the query parameters and go straight to /homes, I will see the spinner that just spins forever and never shows the list of homes. To fix that, I'm going to update my filtering function here to add a guard to check if there are no filters set at all, then simply return the entire list of homes without attempting to filter it. Now reload the page without query parameters and it shows the spinner. And the last kink to iron out here is this. After initial page load, when I select a filter and click apply, it looks like nothing is happening for a couple of seconds, and then the list of homes is refreshed with the filter applied. So it doesn't show the spinner when we are filtering the homes. And to understand why that happens, let's go inside of our homes controller again, and in this subscribe function where we subscribe to query parameters, we extract filters from the query parameters and then pass them to load homes method. And inside of load homes method, we receive the list of homes, filter them, and then push them into the homes stream where our template is parsing that stream and showing the list of homes. However, if you look at how the spinner works, it will only show up if the list of homes is empty. And that never happens in the flow that I just described. Now, there are many ways to fix that, but what I'm going to do is go back to the data service, and in the load homes method, I'll simply add a statement that will push an empty array inside of a homes stream, just like that. Now reload the page, try to apply a couple of filters, and now we see the spinner. Perfect. Now, if you've noticed, when we have filters set in the URL and the list of homes is filtered, and when we open the dropdown with filters, it doesn't show that there are some filters are currently selected. Now, to fix that, I'll go to Homes component and declare a new property for current home type filters. And now in our subscribe function to the query parameters, I'm going to set this new property to whatever the home type filters are coming from the query parameters. Now go into the template and use input property binding to pass this list of selected filters into the form component that displays individual checkboxes. Now this is highlighted red because default filters property doesn't exist on the home type filter component yet. So let's navigate inside of this component and declare this property. Now let me just try to output this in console to see if I got the property binding right. Reload the page, and it shows the currently selected filters. Now I can use it for each individual checkbox here in our form group builder to check whether default filters array includes each individual filter. Just like that. Okay, now reload the page. Open the dropdown, and now it shows the selected filters. Now, for the last nice touch, I'm going to navigate to Home's template and use ng class property binding on the button for opening the dropdown. And I'll set UK button primary class from UIKit if current home type filters array has any items in it. Now reload the page, and we immediately see how home type button gets highlighted because there are selected filters. Now if I reload the page without any filters, the highlight disappears. And let me test it again. Open the dropdown, select apartment, click apply. We see the button gets highlighted, and we see the spinner is spinning. And then it shows the filtered list of homes, and then when we open the dropdown again, it properly shows the selected checkbox. What a delightful user experience!